is I'm going to start to go through it as we get further into this, and I'll show you that the stuff that's prophesied, especially in Isaiah 66, is happening as recently as 50 years ago. There is an event prophesied in there that happened very recently, so it's very cool. But just to give you kind of an idea, hang on, I'm going to back up a little bit. There's a question that needs to be asked, which is a good question, is why? Why would God do this, and why does he have to repeat himself so many times? Why is it additive? Why didn't he just give it to us once? And I want to play a quick video, which I think is kind of fun. They're all smiling over there because they know what I'm going to do. The video that I want to play is it features a character named Ezio Auditore. It's a 16th century Italian man. He is embroiled in a fictional war, but the war started 1,000 years before he was born. He was kind of thrust into it. He didn't know. He was kind of thrust into it when he was forced to witness basically the hanging of his father and his two brothers. And so he, just jumps right in because he's got to fight this war or he's going to be killed. But then as he starts to get older, he starts to ask this question. The big question is why? What is it about this war that's so important? Why am I fighting this, and where do I fit into this? I just have a small piece of this puzzle, and the puzzle's so big, and I want answers. So let's go ahead and do that video.
Claudia, my dearest sister. I have been in Acre a week now, safe and in high spirits, but prepared for the worst. The men and women who have fed and sheltered me here also give me warning that the road to Masyaf is overrun by mercenaries and bandits, not native to this land. What this could mean, I dread to guess. When I first set out from Roma 10 months ago, I did so with a single purpose: to discover what our father did not. In a letter written the year before my birth, he makes mention of a library hidden beneath the stones of Masyaf Castle. A sanctum full of invaluable wisdom. So what will I find when I arrive there? Who will greet me? A host of eager Templars, as I fear most strongly. Or nothing but the whistling of a cold and lonely wind. Masyaf has not been home to the assassins for almost 300 years now. Can we still claim it for our own? Are we welcome there? I am wary of this fight, Claudia. Not because I am tired, but because our struggle seems to move in one direction only, towards chaos. Today, I have more questions than answers. This is why I've come so far. To find clarity. To find the wisdom left behind by the great Altair. So that I may better understand the purpose of our fight, and my place in it. Should anything happen to me, Claudia, should my skills fail me, or my ambition lead me astray, do not seek retribution or revenge in my memory, but fight to continue the search for truth. So that all may benefit. My story is one of many thousands, and the world will not suffer if it ends too soon.
Yeah, leave it to Dan to put on Assassin's Creed in a church. But the key words in that video, which really was what I grabbed onto, which I thought was cool, was where he's, right at the end of that little fight, he says, "I want to understand our struggle and my place in it." That was the thing that was ringing in my ears when I was really looking through all of this, because we have this huge, vast amount of time from Noah all the way to the end. And I mean, it's huge. It's this incredible plan, and it's something that, you know, it's easy to get lost in, and it's easy to forget that, you know, we know oftentimes what people get up and talk about is that God's here today. You know, he's here today, he's here now, and that's true, but it's also true that he's got the whole thing set from beginning to end, and he's told us. And so it's cool. One thing I wrote down here was that, and Paul writes, very famous verse in Ephesians 6:12, he says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." This is the war that we're fighting. You know, this is a war that is been going on since before the flood. And so why write that all down? It's so that we can understand where we fit. I think, personally. It's so that we can know where we fit into this whole struggle. And it gives us hope. You know, because we know that this is a plan that's moving forward, and regardless of what we do, God is going to finish it. The one thing I just can't say this enough is that this plan is so massively huge. I mean, it can almost feel crushing trying to wrap your mind around it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to try and go through and bullet point a little bit of what that is. You know, and while the Messiah may have been the pinnacle of God's plan, like I said, it's additive. The value of the Messiah would have been nothing without everything before that. And so it's just really important to remember. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at that. I put together, let's see if I can make this pop up. Or not. Hey, can you click through to just that first slide that says God's timeline? God's plan. So here we are, right here. This is there we go. I have a laser pointer. Right here, big red dot, that's where we are on this plan, but this is a huge plan. So where do you think it starts? The creation, right? So the plan starts with creation, and last week Neil made some great points about the circular nature of the world, because God created man perfect, and then what happened next? Man screwed it up and fell. And then the rest of God's plan, the rest of history is working to come back around to that perfection. That's what everything that has happened thus far is trying to do, is trying to restore what we lost when mankind fell. So what's interesting is that God makes promises to us that put this plan into motion. These promises are basically almost like pillars of this plan that make it move forward. So there's 6 that are listed in the Old Testament that are worth noting. And the first one is the Adamic covenant, which Neil talked about a little bit last week. It's where God creates man. It's in the first chapter of Genesis. We don't get one chapter into the Bible without a promise from God, which I thought was cool. When I really sat down and thought about it, it's like, we don't get, I mean, God makes a promise to us in the first chapter. And it's not a long chapter, you know. So God says, I give you creation to rule over. And, you know, Neil made the point last week, it was to mankind. And he, you know, he basically says, here's the whole world, just don't eat from that tree. So it was a conditional covenant, but it was a promise that God made. And for those of you who don't know what a covenant is, it's kind of like a really gross pinky swear, but it's something that you don't break. It's a promise you don't break. And sorry, I just really had to throw that in there. But he makes a promise with us that he's going to give us this whole of creation to rule over, but he says if you do don't eat from this tree or else you will die, is basically what he says. So, of course, we eat from the tree, and then comes the curse, and then comes the second covenant, which is often referred to as the Edenic covenant. And the Edenic covenant basically says look, you screwed this up, but I'm going to fix it. I mean, if you're going to put it into loose terminology, there's what a lot of people call as the first messianic prophecy, where God says, the serpent will bite her heel, but her offspring will crush his head. And that, I think, I take that as basically the first time where God says, I'm putting a plan into motion. So then there's another promise that comes later, which is in the reading this week, which is the Noahic covenant, where God makes a promise to Noah. And basically, again, summarizing, he basically says, I'm not going to curse the ground on account of your sin. So it's a promise to protect creation from us, which is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. So, we have this promise that the land is ours, but then we screwed it up. He's going to fix it. But in the meantime, he's going to take care of the land for us.